Good evening. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and we're already 10 minutes late. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming here tonight. I'm Kimball Payne. I'm the now being referred to by the press as the outgoing city manager. It's not because I have a pleasant disposition, right, Cherise? Anyway, thank you all for being here tonight. So we thought we would do a couple of things tonight as we were preparing for this discussion and this presentation on two-way traffic conversion downtown. Somebody realized that it's been 15 years this May since City Council adopted the Downtown and Riverfront Master Plan. So we decided to turn this into a little bit of a celebration of the success that we have had downtown over the last 15 years. Based on, in large part, by a commitment that was made by City Council in 2001 to invest $1 million a year of public funds into infrastructure downtown, which has resulted, I believe, or certainly helped a lot of the revitalization on private property that has occurred downtown and resulted in us more than doubling the assessed value of property in downtown. And so to celebrate that, we have a cake back there that everybody is welcome to as we break up, and because we thought, why not celebrate our achievements as a community in revitalizing downtown Lynchburg over the last 15 years. So welcome to that celebration as well. But that's not why you're here, right? But I do want to point out, this is the agenda for this evening. We're going to talk about the Downtown Master Plan, some next steps, why two-way traffic, how it'll work, general questions. Then we want to have a break, and we will have staff around at all these stations. If you want to look at particularly what's going on in a particular block or in front of a particular building or at your business, we can do that. Shortly after that breakout session, we're going to kind of gather up any other information that we might feel we need to share with you, and then we'll just kind of wrap it up at the end. Our goal is not to keep you here all night. I think the NBA playoffs are at 8:30, is that right? So we'll be sensitive to that as well. All right, so this is not a new idea, okay? Downtown Lynchburg in the 1950s and 60s, when it was a vibrant center of commerce for this entire region, which is still the goal for it to be, and Lynchburg, of course, is still the center of commerce for this large region, this metropolitan area of 250,000 people. We had two-way traffic on Main Street. We're not here to talk about parking, but I want you to notice the parking meters that are there as well. Downtown was where everything was happening. Some people have said this is what killed downtown, but we can have a long discussion about the cultural changes that occurred in America in the 50s and the 60s after the war with the baby boomers being born and cheap gasoline and people moving out into the suburbs for various reasons that actually led to the demise of most downtowns across America, many downtowns across America. And now we're seeing a shift, a cultural shift, a societal shift back to an interest in these incredibly dynamic built places that serve broader communities. And we're seeing people wanting to live downtown in addition to work downtown and play downtown. And so this is part of a natural progression that's occurring all across the country of where cities that are revitalizing their downtowns are taking the steps of converting one-way streets, which we converted to in the 60s, in order to get people into downtown and out of downtown and through downtown as quickly as possible. No longer seeing downtown as a destination of where you did anything maybe other than work. So you wouldn't shop, you wouldn't dine, you wouldn't go to cultural activities downtown. That moved out into the suburbs, as many of you know and understand. And now as it moves back into downtown, and downtown's becoming more of a destination, we feel it's appropriate to support that movement and to bring this back. And this is occurring all across the country. Hundreds of communities are converting their one-way streets back to two-way. I'm personally convinced that this is what it's going to take to fill the storefronts that are still empty. We have had incredible success over the last 15 years in bringing well over 700 residential units downtown. And as we all know, retail follows residential, retail follows rooftops. And as we try to promote retail development downtown, I think a logical next step to provide the visibility and to provide to continue to provide a walkable environment that people can enjoy the retailers who will move downtown and who want to stay and grow downtown, that the two-way traffic is a viable and an important thing to consider. This is the intersection. The previous picture was of Main Street. This is the intersection of 5th and Church, and you can see we've torn a lot of buildings down. The intersection doesn't look like that anymore, but two-way traffic and turning movements and a lot of activity. So this is, again, not an idea that has just come up in the last few months. The Downtown Master Plan that was developed in 2000 and adopted in 2001 raised this as an issue. It's too hard for you to read that, but it says, two-way traffic in lieu of the current one-way system was requested by retail merchants on Main Street to 1, slow traffic, and 2, double their exposure. In addition, stop signs can be used in lieu of traffic lights to prevent speeding through the yellow lights and to save the cost of installing and maintaining lights. And it talks about these are future decisions that this community is going to have to make. Lynch's Landing has struggled with this issue over the last 15 years. There has been various discussions off and on about whether or not it was time to move to two-way traffic, and never really got to the point that we felt comfortable moving ahead. Of course, in the meantime, all the residential development downtown and now the even new commercial and business development that's occurring downtown. And so with the utility work that's going on to replace the water lines downtown, it seemed like the ideal time, as we're going to tear up all the streets and then try to restore the streets and improve the streetscapes, it seemed like an ideal time to look at a conversion to two-way traffic. Because a lot of the design issues related to the streetscape improvements could be done or needed to be considered as we were going through this. I want to touch for a minute on this utility project, because those of you who have come to meetings about the utility project, the water line replacement project, will understand some of the goals that we announced, that we enunciated at the very beginning of that process as we go through this major utility line replacement project. And those goals were to support the downtown businesses, to support their growth and their continued success, to attract new businesses, to create a more walkable, pedestrian-safe downtown as we do these improvements, and to continue with the revitalization that is going on downtown. And so I believe the two-way traffic is consistent with those goals. There have been numerous studies on two-way traffic done across the country. I have yet to find one that says this is a terrible idea and it resulted in bad things for a community. The studies are saying that there are benefits in these areas, in the areas of economic vitality, with respect to increased property values, making a community more walkable, that it improves the pedestrian movements downtown, primarily by slowing traffic down and letting traffic understand that in a downtown pedestrian environment, pedestrians have the right-of-way. Vehicles do not have the right-of-way in these streets. And so getting folks to understand their responsibility when a pedestrian is in a crosswalk, which we have a real problem with downtown right now. There are studies that show that downtowns, the convergence to two-way traffic produce a safer environment. Unfortunately, we don't have a high crime rate downtown, but it's a well-established principle of urbanism that more eyes on the street, more activity on the street, more of a connection between the street and the retail, the fronts of these businesses, produces a safer environment. And then the streets become more livable, they become more pedestrian friendly, they become more walkable, and that results from things like slowing the traffic down. People who are driving through these streets at 35 and 40 miles an hour, merely trying to get from one end of downtown to the other, don't see what's going on the streets the way you do if you're going a speed of, say, around 20 to 25 or even 30 miles an hour. So the visibility, the pedestrian safety, enhancing the visibility of these storefronts is a big thing. Giving the storefronts the double exposure that they get by having traffic going two ways. Giving a visitor to downtown the option of turning around and getting back to something that they saw that they're interested in, but have a problem doing it right now. So this is very much about the visitors and the folks who are going to come downtown less frequently than people who may work downtown, who always will kind of figure out the easiest way around. So some of these studies are on the website. You're certainly free to look at those. If you can find one that says this is the worst idea ever, and downtowns all over America are going from two-way streets back to one-way streets, I'd like to see those studies, and we will certainly take that into consideration. This is an example of one of the concerns that folks have, and it shows some of the blind spots that drivers have at intersections when they're working on one-way streets, and how their visibility is to the front and not to the sides and to the backs. And so businesses, retail businesses that are on these streets suffer from a lack of exposure, from half the exposure that they would get under a two-way street scenario. I don't think I really have much more to say about that. That's pretty much the reason that we are looking at this. I understand that there are concerns from folks about loading zones. We have all the design work that's been done to show how this will work. We have loading zones in every block. We have actually gained a little bit of parking through this design, and we would like you to take the opportunity to get up and to walk around and to see how this is supposed to work in the various block segments and at the various intersections. But before I go on to that, though, are there any general questions that I can address? Yes, sir.
Downtown in this plan?
I think there's a net increase of 7 spots.
Okay, I
So it's
saw
not
on
huge.
the on-street it said that there was a net increase of 6 or 7, something like that.
6 or 7 on street.
Right, but
And of course, we have a broader goal of getting long-term parkers off the street and into the decks and lots, so that the businesses can enjoy and the customers can enjoy turnover on the street if they need to get in for an hour or 2 or less.
sure, because obviously there's been a lot of increase in the number of people who need vehicles with all this residential construction redevelopment taking place, and there has been no increase in parking to take care of all of those folks.
No, but I would argue that our parking is generally underutilized downtown because everybody wants to be on the street and they're not taking advantage of the property off street, either the decks or the decks that are publicly owned or the decks and lots that are privately owned.
Yes, sir. I would disagree, but in any case, there hasn't been any increase in parking made available with all of the increase in business and in residents in the downtown area. Is that right? Do you know?
No, there has been an increase in parking. Some of the developers of some of these loft projects are here, and they've got parking, they put them in some of their buildings. They've developed parking lots adjacent to their building on private property. There's been no increase in public parking downtown, but the private sector has built the parking in many cases to accommodate the residential development that's associated with them. It's one of the things their bankers expect them to show. It's how they're going to park their residents.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
It'd be nice as a business owner on Church Street if the city employees would park in a lot somewhere rather than on the street.
I agree with you 100%.
One way to slow down traffic downtown would be to enforce the speed limit, which isn't done, and that's all.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to think that changing people's behavior is better than punishing them for bad behavior, and there are well-developed steps that you can take to change people's behavior so that we cannot keep police officers downtown all day long. It would not be a very friendly environment if people had the expectation they're going to get a ticket every time they came downtown. So if we can change their behavior to be more consistent with promoting a community and an active downtown area, then that's the goal here. Yes.
Address the, deliveries and loading and unloading. My company, we have about 30 stops a day for about a minute with sound equipment and rental equipment going in and out and other items coming in, where, they'll stop, or larger trucks will stop for about a minute. Right now, they can just go around those. But what's going to happen?
They can stop illegally in the street, which is what they're doing now. Maybe that's
Right.
where we should be given some of those tickets, because that's illegal what they're doing. But we are putting loading zones, particularly in the block between 9th and 10th on Main Street. If you look at the design here, there is a significant amount of loading zones, some that will expire midday to get the lunch crowd in and out, but some that I think on your side of the street last all day long.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare to find one open, you know, and there's so
Right.
many stops every day. It used to have a back entrance that the city took away with that alleyway when it used to be a federal, when it was a post office, and they've
Yeah.
closed that off, so there's no way you can load in the back of those buildings now.
Well, maybe that's something that we ought to consider, because I think it's a shame to let an alley go to waste if we can load the back of these buildings. That's really a great way to do it. We have recently submitted for a Tiger grant to help support some of the funding for downtown, and one of the ideas that we have in the grant, which I think was really creative, was to build a freight elevator in the Midtown parking deck to move the elevator back towards Commerce Street and put a permanent loading zone on Commerce Street so people can unload, get up a freight elevator, and then deliver into Main Street if necessary. You have to walk a little bit, but that might work as well, in addition to the loading zones on the street. So every block has loading zones on it, and I would like people who have an interest in a particular spot to look at these plans and see where the loading zones are and see what the time limits are, and we want to make sure this works. Again, our goal here is to promote downtown as a destination and to promote the success and expansion of businesses in these storefronts. We've got to fill these storefronts, and I think despite all of our success in 15 years, we have too many empty storefronts downtown still. I think it's interesting that our fullest streets with storefronts is the section of Main Street between 12th and going east, where we do have two-way traffic. Just make that point. Yes, Rodney.
Yeah, just a couple things. First of all, the issue of EMT responses, fire trucks, and what happened today on Main Street, and I have no idea what they were doing, but a work crew showed up, blocked off a significant portion of the one lane in 10th Street, and in the 10th block and in 9th block, without impeding traffic at all. Traffic flow continued without any problem. They were there for about 3 or 4 hours, packed up, left. No impact whatsoever on downtown businesses. No detours needed to be set up. I'm not sure how you would have, if you were traveling the way you can't go on Main Street now, so people would have gotten into the parking deck without someone there an individual there to direct them, a flagger. Yeah. That's not something as a rare occurrence. It happens all the time. And to me, that is going to be one of the biggest problems with this, is that for just a routine stop in front of one of the banks or anywhere, that it is going to shut down Main Street and create havoc.
Okay, so let me address the emergency vehicle response. One of the things that we're doing with the utility line replacement is removing all the fire hydrants to the corners, to the radiuses where you can't park anyway. And so that's because right now we have some fire hydrants that are mid-block, and they actually prevent people from parking on 30 feet either side of them, which doesn't make a lot of sense when you're trying to promote parking. So that's one of the things that we're doing to promote that. I have a theory that says EMS, emergency response vehicles, they're big, they're red, they've got lights, they've got sirens. People know to get out of their way. If we have an emergency, we have to respond to an emergency. There's no guarantee that an emergency won't block traffic going in both directions, even on a one-way, or both lanes in a one-way street. So we just have to respond to the emergency that arises as best we can, and then get out of the way as quickly as possible. Things like that happen in an urban environment. With respect to what was going on in the street today, I don't know exactly what that was, but part of what we're doing is trying to replace all the water lines so that we're not coming downtown and digging up streets. And a lot of our work that has been going on downtown is because of failing water lines. And so hopefully we'll get this fixed, and that problem at least will go away for a long time. We've been trying to coordinate with both the power company and the gas company and the telephone company so that they will all get in here and upgrade their infrastructure as well, so that failing infrastructure, which in some cases is over 100 years old, will be something that is a very, very rare occurrence once we finish this utility work.
All right, second question. I noticed that the stoplight at 9th Street is now gone. And has a detailed study been done with current traffic numbers and with pedestrian numbers on that corner, and the impact that it will have? I just see four-way. Right. People don't know what to do at a four-way stop, and there's a significant amount of pedestrian traffic there. So the pedestrians aren't going to know what to do, the cars aren't going to know what to do, and I think it's going to create a huge bottleneck right there.
Does the driving test still ask you what you're supposed to do at a four-way stop? Because, I believe people can learn. We had people when we first put the first roundabout in who said no one will ever figure these things out either. I happen to believe that our folks can learn, and if they have a different expectation, and the expectation is not that you can drive from one end of Main Street to the other at 40 miles an hour. That is an expectation that is bad for business, is bad for pedestrians, is bad for a walkable community. We have got to change that perception. Yes, there are 2 laptops set up over here that show some of the modeling that is currently underway, that has been done to show how traffic will move downtown. We're actually talking about whether or not we should go ahead and test that in the short term and convert some of these intersections on a temporary basis to four-way stops and see what happens. We need to let people know it's coming and how to, who's got the right of way and things like that. But again, the idea is to slow the traffic down, to improve the walkability, and to let people understand that when you come downtown, that it is a destination that is a walkable environment. Though the most successful downtowns are highly walkable and are pedestrian friendly. And we've got to change the mindset back to what it was in the 50s from what it is today, that I just can go through there and get in and out as quickly as possible. And so that's what it is modeled over here. I think it took 20 more seconds to move from one end of downtown to the other. With four-way stops and a slower speed limit, because you're not waiting at stoplights when there's no traffic. And that frustrates me, is sitting at a stoplight waiting for a machine to click through a timer when there's no traffic coming, when I could just as easily move through the intersection, acknowledging that the pedestrians have the right of way first. And we're not seeing that happen right now. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I'm Gene Davis. I live in Windhurst. And I'm a longtime Lynchburger since the 1940s. I remember very well when downtown Lynchburg was two-way streets, and I recall when it was changed to reduce congestion, and it worked. I'm afraid that well, that as you say, and I agree, was due to principally the cultural changes and development elsewhere, but I'm concerned that it appears that the concern over slowing traffic, gridlock also slows traffic. It calms traffic, but it does nothing to calm drivers. And it appears to me that we're headed back to the problems that we had before we changed those streets, and I'm very much concerned about this.
So I'm not aware of any evidence that we actually had problems back then. I mean, it was congested. I don't want to give anybody the impression that one of the goals here is to reduce congestion. My goal is to create more congestion downtown, because more congestion means more people, and it means more business, and it means more activity, and it means these empty buildings have more have businesses in them and have people in them. That is my goal. I came here 15 years ago, and City Council said we want to revitalize downtown. That means bring people downtown. 15 years ago, you could walk down Main Street on a Friday evening and there was nobody on Main Street. Now, sometimes you can't find a place to park on Main Street on a Friday evening. That is the success as I define it for downtown revitalization. So I will never stand up here and say our goal is to reduce congestion. Our goal is to make downtown more of a destination, more active, more vibrant, and more businesses downtown. And that is going to produce some congestion. If your goal is to get through downtown, if you have no desire to stop downtown, take an alternate route. There are alternate routes, so take one. And that's, again, it's about being a destination, about promoting and supporting business development downtown. That conflicts with moving people through as quickly as possible. So my goal is that people, ultimately, if this works, will come downtown, they'll find a place to park, and they'll enjoy a walk in a vibrant downtown that has storefronts that are full of activity and that are interesting, and that they feel safe in walking through, and they can cross the street, they can walk a couple of blocks. That's what a successful downtown looks like to me. Park and walk. Mr. Case.
I'm not in favor of this for the record. I'm not in favor of this. In 1950s, you had a whole different retail spectrum. You had men. I'm born and raised here, so I remember that. And you're never going to get the retail back that you had in the 50s. You know, you had Leggett's and Melrose and everybody. And a lot of the retailers down here have failed because they have shops that don't really provide anything that people need on a daily basis. You know, gift shops are great, but it's got everything you want, nothing you need. Now, what's really successful downtown is the food and drink, you know, because we've got good restaurants and people like to eat and go out and you know, it's part of a lifestyle. And so I'm tickled to death with what's happened downtown. I can't say enough good about it, but the congestion thing concerns me and the sight distances, because I've got to be on the 9th and Main, and to try to come out of there with this very poor sight distance. And now, say I come down from Church at 10th, I can take a left turn because it's a one-way street, but I won't be able to take a left turn. I'm going to have to sit there and wait for the traffic. So I'm not so sure that this is a great plan from where I stand, but I've been wrong before. So.
Okay. All right. I understand there's people who are concerned and are you know, don't like change. There has been a small group of people, and I'm not saying you're part of them, but there have been a minority of folks for 15 years who have said the city shouldn't invest 1 cent downtown. Downtown is dead. You're wasting your money. I would like to think that over 15 years we have proved some of those naysayers wrong, and I understand the concern and the potential resistance, but I would argue that we have a lot of people looking at this. I don't believe we have done anything to do otherwise than promote business downtown and promote a walkable community. And I'm personally convinced, as has been hundreds of other communities, that this is the next step to get these storefronts filled and to take downtown to the next level and to get these buildings successful.
For the record, in a small minority, with my partner, we've invested $6.5 million downtown. And I built a building for Appalachian Building when nobody was building downtown. So, you know, I've got a lot of experience downtown too, and I put my money where my mouth is. So, you know, for the record.
Yeah, we've put public money where your mouth is too. So,
and I pay a lot of taxes for that.
Toby,
I have a question on. Okay, so when we're talking about if you don't want to go through downtown to get to the expressway, and where are we pushing the traffic to? If we live in Rivermont, are we trying to run them to Boonesboro and all the way out there where Fresh Market is now, where it's an absolute disaster? Are we sending them up across to cut over and Madison Heights over to get on? Where are we trying to push the traffic to?
well, you know, one of the joys of a grid system, of a functional grid system, is we don't have to push it anywhere because traffic will find its way. We are in the process of completing a way too expensive and too lengthy project called the Midtown Connector that will get people back to the expressway. So there's another option there. So you can use Kemper Street, Campbell Avenue to get to the connector. The 210 bypass, as I call it, yes, through Madison Heights is an option that people can certainly use. And there's nothing to prevent them from going on Church Street if they want to go from Rivermont to the expressway. It'll take them 20 seconds longer based on their modeling. And it will promote a downtown that is safer for the pedestrians. You hit those green lights now, you take your life in your hands trying to walk across the street at City Hall. So, I mean, I don't think it'll take longer. I think that option will still be there, and if it's an inconvenient option, there will be 3 or 4 other options for people to take. Carl.
Yeah, my question is, we have a lot of off-street parking that's underutilized. Is in this project, is there going to be better wayfinding, better signage to be able to direct people who don't know downtown into those locations?
Absolutely. A big part of this is to try to help the visitors and the occasional visitors downtown, or the people who've never been here before, because it is really confusing and you can't find the parking. We can certainly provide better signage for the public parking that's off the street. I'd like to be able to work with the private property owners too, if they would allow their parking to be used by visitors. And because I think 75% of the parking downtown is privately owned. And so we do need to provide much better wayfinding. We've got a really pretty sign that nobody can see right now on Main Street. And you can only see it going in one direction too. Yes. So. Yes, sir.
What are the plans for improving pedestrian traffic, especially for visually impaired and mobility impaired?
The plans are to increase the bump outs at the intersections and to provide the tactile surfaces for folks at the intersections. There's also a state law that says a pedestrian in a crosswalk has the right of way, and we're going to need to make sure that is understood and enforced. And so the signage and training the drivers to do that is a part of that process.
A system with audible crosswalks.
Well, those audible crosswalks work if you've got traffic signals and if you've got the traffic lights to control them, and we're talking about doing away with that. Right.
That's the concern.
Right. I acknowledge your concern. I don't have a better answer than what I just gave you. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, sir.
Was there any study done, perhaps changing the existing traffic plan, in other words, one-way traffic on Main and opposite direction in Church, removing the traffic lights and putting in the stop signs and lowering the speed limit on both of those streets, instead of going through all of this of putting two-way traffic on both streets?
I don't believe we studied that because I'm not sure that would be consistent with what our goals are here, which is to, again, to increase that visibility for those businesses. And just putting stop signs in and then still having one-way traffic, I'm not sure that would accomplish that goal.
I don't see why it wouldn't. I mean, your goal is to increase the visibility of businesses on Main and Church Street, is that correct?
Right.
And to eliminate Main and Church Street as a pass-through for anyone who needs to get to the expressway from Rivermont.
Not eliminate it, just make it not the priority.
It makes it a very low priority for it.
Well,
okay.
It should not be the priority, in my opinion.
Well, and we can disagree about that, but that's immaterial at this point. My question is, if the means to get people, drivers on Main Street and Church Street, to pay more attention to the businesses that are on Main Street and Church Street, why would stop signs at every intersection and lower speed limits not accomplish that same goal?
I think it would partially accomplish that in terms of slowing it down, as you suggest, and improving the visibility, because you do see more when you're going slower. However, it would not address the issue of, gee, that's a nice place that I'm driving by here. I wonder how I get back to it.
By circling the block the way you would have to do
Yeah,
under your
and
plan.
people sometimes don't have the patience to do that because it gets confusing with one-way streets.
Well,
We have people every day who drive the wrong way on our streets right now because they expect the downtown to operate in a different way than ours operates.
Yes, I'm aware of that and have been aware of that since it was changed. But I really think that you have jumped from one to the other, and now we're going back again, and obviously not considered one possibility that might achieve this goal. And if folks can't handle the business of circling the block, the need for that is not going to change simply because you've got two-way traffic on a street. If you've gone past something, you're still going to have to circle the block.
So what is your concern? Why do you feel like this won't work?
I'm not saying it won't work. I'm saying it is another change that you're going to make on the assertion that it will make something better. You're going to spend a lot of money to do it, and you don't have any absolute assurance that it will make it better. You say there aren't any studies saying, oh, it's a really bad idea. Has anybody studied it to find out whether or not it was a really bad idea?
I think what we've got is numerous studies that say it was a great idea, that it improved the economic vitality of the downtown, it made a safer environment, and improved assessed values. We have not seen a study that says it was negative. I think we found one that was neutral at best. We are seeing this occur all across the country. When I travel to another community, my eyes are trying to see what is going on in that community because that's kind of what I'm trained to do, and I have a high degree of interest in that. And I am not aware of a community that is taking two-way streets and converting them to one-way right now.
Right. It's not the fashion.
It's not the fashion. It's not going to be successful for downtown. And again, if we're going to have these businesses, and Gary's exactly right, we're not going to have the Leggett's downtown anymore, but we're going to have successful downtowns that people like to go to, have a very vibrant retail business environment on the streets, on their main streets downtown. Yeah. And I think you will find in most cases they have two-way traffic. Yeah. Or are moving in that direction.
Well, we've certainly vastly improved the downtown environment in every measurable way in the last 15 years with one-way streets. Now,
Despite one-way streets,
well,
I would say.
With one-way streets, because we've certainly had the one-way streets, and
right.
It certainly has improved enormously, largely due to the enormous efforts of the city using massive amounts of money to make it happen. And I'm glad for it. I enjoy it personally.
Well, I would like to say
all the
that
time.
the private sector has put in even more massive amounts of money than the city has.
Yeah.
And that, again, I think in order for us to fill these storefronts and to get the private investment to continue in these storefronts, we're going to have to support that with two-way traffic. I think has a much better chance of happening with two-way traffic than without. And again, thank you for the compliment that the things we have done for 15 years have been successful.
Yep.
The same people are saying that the two-way streets will be successful. I'm convinced it will be successful. It's where people are going. It's how vital downtowns are being created. And again, I understand concerns and I understand doubts, but if I've got to convince everybody in this city that it's the best thing to do, it's never going to happen.
Of course not.
And we've been talking about it for 15 years now. We have an opportunity by tearing up all the streets downtown to put them back in a way that's better to promote this community.
We can hope so.
Luann.
I understand that we are going to be having the loading zones that will continue to be there for deliveries that are made to the different shops between 7 and 11. But my concern is about deliveries that come in after that time. And then if we are to tell all of our delivery people to come between 7 and 11, what happens when we have a congestion of delivery trucks that are now trying to do what they need to do between 7 and 11?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I would hope there would still be some parking on the street that a delivery truck could park in. If my hope is, frankly, that the streets are so full of your customers that a delivery truck can't get in there, and maybe they'll change. I was curious how they do this in Charlottesville, where they have a downtown mall and they have hundreds of restaurants and businesses down there, and not a delivery truck can park in front of any of those businesses. And I went down there one morning, and it was amazing what was going on early in the morning. They were loading and unloading those storefronts. This works. I can't believe people think it will not work here when it works in every other community in America. It will work, and people will adapt. And businesses, if you are the wholesalers, the suppliers will adapt to because they want to sell you a product, and they'll figure out how to do that. They'll change, I think, their patterns of delivery. Frankly, I'm not here to support the wholesalers. I'm here to support the businesses on the street.
I just want to make a few comments. So I don't work downtown. I just go down there for fun. And I will say the one-way streets, I don't like change, but I'm going to be open to this, do trap you as somebody who's not familiar with the city, because you can't get back to where you want to be unless you go a couple blocks up, and you have to go up, and then you have to go a couple blocks back, and then you have to kind of guess where you're supposed to take that street. So I'm looking forward to the two-way streets. And for the four-way stops, yes, I like to just come straight, get all the green lights, but I never get all the green lights. But the four-way stop at McConville and Nationwide Drive is incredibly busy, and people seem to be able to figure out that four-way stop really well. And, maybe we have to educate ourselves a little bit, but if we can make it through that stop, I think we'll be able to do it through the main street. And, I know change is hard, but, I'm looking forward to being able to get downtown a little bit more easily.
Thank you. Mr. Dotson has a question in the back here.
Comments. I was on City Council 12 years. Obviously, we talked about this back in 2000 when we passed the Sasaki plan with downtown revitalization. Being on the Parking Authority, we talked about it for a long time, Kim. One thing I was going to state is Lynchburg, and some people know it in this room, was one of the last cities in Virginia to revitalize its downtown. There were small towns, cities that spent a lot of money. We're one of the last ones. I say that because you talk about different cities in America. Is anybody gone to Fredericksburg, Stanton, Harrisonburg, Winchester? I know most of those towns, if not all of them, had one-way traffic at one time, and they converted to two-way traffic. I say using the model of fellow fellow Virginia cities as an example of what they've done compared to taking one-way traffic, making two-way traffic be more sellable than saying, different cities in America.
I'm not sure what Caroline Street in Fredericksburg, what it is right now, if it's still one way or not. But I was talking to Sergei Trebetskoy this morning about Stanton, and they are still talking about two-way traffic there. They got close, but I think is it Berkeley that's still one way. Roanoke is talking about converting their streets downtown to two-way. Richmond is converting some of their streets in downtown to two-way. Again, we're not on the leading edge of this. We probably are on the lagging edge, but it's something that communities are doing to support a revitalized downtown across the Commonwealth and across the country.
Hey,
we have, yes, Jay.
Jay Parker with the YMCA. Just One thought that I was thinking of, I like what's going on downtown with revitalization. I'm with the YMCA. A concern that comes in my mind is we use our downtown Y as more than just a place to exercise. We bring a lot of kids down there. We use it for a lot of things, which we have to bring buses, and they have to unload, and it takes them a few minutes to make sure we get kids off and on the bus in a safe fashion. And that right there, in my mind, concerns me because I'm going to block traffic from at least one way, and that's
a school bus blocks traffic both ways, right? That's the law.
Yeah. The only thing is we don't have a stop sign and all the mechanisms that a school system has to protect that. So I'm not really worried about the safety because we'll do our job. It's just going to block the flow of the traffic in both directions. So that would be my concern. And we do bring a lot of people downtown. And if we have any unloading or loading of equipment, that's a big tractor trailer that has to unload cardio equipment. So it does take a while, and there's no really the topography of where we're at is not flat, so it's hard. So that's just a couple of concerns that I would have at the YMCA.
So the question becomes, I think, as a community, do we want to acknowledge all the exceptions where the traffic might not flow for a few moments a day and in exchange that for a traffic system that doesn't work to support the businesses downtown 95% of the time? And so that's the question. We can plan by exception and not do things to improve because of some inconveniences that might occur in a dense urban environment, which occur in every dense urban environment. Downtowns are not designed for people to move through them freely. That's just the way the world is. Downtowns, if they are vibrant, if they are active, they are congested, and things like this happen. Our goal here is to make it work better than 80% of the time, and I think it will. So if we talk about the 10 or 20% of the time it doesn't work, then I think we're going to miss an opportunity to make it work for 80% of the time. We have programmed in a break for you to get up and stretch your legs and look at some of the visuals that we have here. I would encourage you to do that. We'll do that for about maybe 15 minutes and then gather back and see if we have any other questions we can answer for you. If you decide that it's time to leave, we certainly want to thank you for being here. There is a comment box out there. I want to acknowledge we have at least one city council member here. Randy Nelson is here. I'm sorry, Sterling Wilder, council member-elect, is here as well. I don't know that I missed any other council members, but I want to acknowledge that they're here. Bend their ear, because ultimately they rule.
At a certain place and end at a certain place, and they can't.
One thing about this right here is, with these islands, I think this is a spot currently.
Okay, so again, for those of you who have stayed with us, thank you. A couple of points that I neglected to make earlier. One of the things that has driven this is the utility construction that's going on right now, and that project started quietly on 8th Street and has been proceeding apace, but it's getting ready to turn the corner and go onto Church Street. It's right there at the corner of 8th and Church at the Virginian Hotel. So we expect that project will be turning the corner next week, maybe late this week, but certainly next week. And we will see, we'll start to see the impact of that utility project on Church Street, which will be closed between 7th and 8th. Is that correct? So, except for local access. So this is really the first test of that project and how that's going to work. And I think some people are going to really wish we had two-way streets then. I will, because I try to come down Church every day. The other thing, I was asked to make a point. Somebody in the discussion asked about leaving Church and Main one way and creating two-way traffic on the side streets, 7th and 8th and the others in between. The problem with some of those streets is they're too narrow for the trucks that come downtown, and we're not trying to accommodate tractor trailers. frankly, I don't believe tractor trailers should be downtown, but that's something that will change over time. But even the larger delivery trucks, that smaller than tractor trailers, can't accommodate the turning movements onto streets like 7th and 8th if they're two-way. It would jam up those intersections. And so we looked at that very, very carefully. Matter of fact, one of the commitments we made for the Virginian Hotel was that we would have two-way traffic on 8th Street, and it's just not going to work, right? So we've talked to them, and I think the two-way traffic on Church helps with that at the hotel. So those are the sort of things that we are going back and forth on as we look at that. Somebody else told me to make a comment about all the development that we're seeing down in the Commerce Street area and the activity that's going on there, and made the point that that's a two-way street. And so, again, I think we have some examples in this community of where two-way traffic is successful on the Main Street blocks between 12th and going out of town, and then on Commerce Street. So I think it certainly can work. We just have to decide whether as a community we want to take that leap and move in that direction. Were there anybody else from the staff side who's been talking to folks? Any general questions that we need to address? Anybody heard? Or any other questions, general questions then from the public? Carl, and then this fellow over here. Yes, sir.
My question is about what you just talked about with the side streets being two-way. Regardless of whether Main Street and Church are two-way, it's still confusing to get around if the side streets are one-way. Why did those need to be accessible to truck? Like, why does a truck need to be able to go up and down 11th Street or 10th Street?
It probably doesn't, but people tend to want to turn onto a street that seems to allow them to go in there. And we could put up a sign, but I think I can demonstrate to you every day that people aren't reading their signs downtown. Possibly it could do that, and I think we'll continue to look at that. But I know the traffic engineers, and I wasn't happy to hear that we couldn't keep the two-way on 8th Street. I think or 7th. It's worked really well. But we will continue to look at that. If we can make it work, I think that's great, because I would like to see that. Right now we've got the two-way on 9th, and that works fine. This fellow over here had a question.
Yes, my question was, you spoke of the possibility or plan, and I missed the wording of the freight elevator on Commerce that backs up to the parking deck. Is that a plan? Is that an idea, or where are we at with that?
It's an idea that we hope would become a plan if we. I think it's a great idea. We have applied for a $28 million Tiger grant. Is that what it was? $28 million Tiger grant that we will hear about in the summer sometime. We are looking for the funding to support the streetscape improvements downtown and to improve some multimodal access. It includes ideas like having a park and ride over at the parking lot that's at the end of Court Street, over by where the James River Conference Center used to be. That is a public parking lot that's terribly underutilized. It also would support the downtown circulator that GLTC has funds for. And it includes access across the John Lynch Bridge to the park over in Amherst as well. And one of the ideas was to move the elevator that's in the middle of the Midtown deck right now out to Commerce Street and convert it into a freight elevator so that people could park on Commerce. The hills are certainly an issue here with loading and unloading. And if you could park on Commerce in a permanent loading zone down there in front of the parking deck, use a freight elevator, get up to Main Street, you would at least have access to a couple of blocks up there that you could service. And we think that's a really good idea. If we don't get the Tiger grant, I still think it's a good idea that we ought to look at. I'm hopeful the City Council will continue their commitment to $1 million a year downtown, because I think it's paid incredible dividends. Council committed to do that for 20 years. There's about 4 more years to go on that, and I'm hopeful that future councils will continue to do that, because to do things like that and other things to improve the amenities to support the private development downtown. Yes, ma'am.
I was looking at the maps and saw trees on all 4 corners at the stop signs. And if pedestrians are trying to cross the street and you want cars to be able to see the pedestrians too, you need no trees on the 4 corners. and have more low-growing perennials, hopefully, so you don't have to have city workers digging up plants every spring and replanting them in the fall. And make sure that the trees are native Virginia, native East Coast trees.
Just say it, not Bradford pears.
Not Bradford pears.
Thank you. No, it's interesting, and Maggie, this is something for us to note, that a number of people have commented to me about the number of trees that are shown on these plans, and the concerns about visibility and access and things like that. So I don't know if it's more than we've got right now. It's certainly, we intend whatever they are to be appropriate for downtown. I was telling somebody the story that when I came here 15 years ago and tried to walk down the street, my head was in the branches of the hollies. And I said, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a pedestrian environment. How come a holly tree's hitting me right here when I walk down the street? And so if you see the trees that are on 9th Street that are more appropriate, where the limbs are up 7 or 8 feet, so you've got access, you've got visibility to the storefronts, those are the sort of trees we need to be looking at. Not Bradford pears, not hollies growing low to the ground. We've got to maintain that visibility. You're exactly right.
The hollies grew right in front of the street signs for years.
Right. Yeah, so we've got to be smarter about this.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Again, thank you so much for being here tonight. I know, yes, Randy.
Kim, there have been some questions about the coordination between the work on the Main Street bridge at the expressway and how that will coordinate with what's happening on construction on Main Street. Do you have some insights into a timeline on that so that there's not double whammy in terms of access and traffic?
Did Lee Newland put you up to this? City engineer. I have some, I'm not sure if it's insight, I have some inside information. And it was just mentioned to me tonight that, we now have the funding to fix the Main Street Bridge. And we are in the process of designing that project and trying to understand how it's going to work. And we're kind of facing the same issue we were facing with Fifth Street and with also the utility line replacement, that we can do the project a whole lot cheaper and a whole lot faster if we shut that Main Street Bridge down in both directions, to the tune of saving over $1 million and cutting about 9 months off the project length. We have to decide whether that's better than, if the detours will work well enough that we are willing to accommodate that disruption. Again, I just first heard about that today, so it's a discussion that we need to have at the staff level to try to figure out how that works. The goal, I believe, is to be done with the Main Street Bridge before the utility line work even gets down to that part of the city. So we are very carefully trying to coordinate projects like that. And so while we're working up on this end of the city, get that end taken care of, and so then that end works when we're down there causing other problems by doing the utility work down there. So we're definitely thinking about those issues.
Thank you. The other question is, it has been suggested to me somewhat candidly that the two-way traffic is a done deal. There's a contract that's already about to be signed with the contractor to do the work, and tonight's gathering is not going to make a great deal of difference. Is there any comment that you can make about whether or not there is a contract and whether or not it will be signed before City Council has a voice in this?
Right. Our utility line replacement project, which is a maximum cost not to exceed project, we've gone about it a little bit differently this time. It really has been broken into two parts. There's a utility part that's under construction right now, and there's a streetscape part. We have a signed contract on the utility work. We have a guaranteed maximum price on the utility work for phase one only. And that contract has been signed, and that project is underway. We anticipate, once we finalize this design, to have a guaranteed maximum price contract for the streetscape work. There is no contract at this point. There is no final design at this point. I hope we get there quickly, because we don't want to have the streetscape work follow too far behind the utility work, We have, particularly in phase one, a goal of having the streetscape work completed before the Virginian opens. The last thing I want to do is have that hotel open and then go and rip up all the sidewalks in front of it. So that's our goal, but this is part of that discussion, and we need to move quickly, but it hasn't been signed yet. I'm hoping it will be signed soon. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier that you're talking to other utility providers that have
underground stuff in the downtown streets, telephone, gas, electric, whatever. I know the electric company put a bunch of money in on Church Street recently, putting in new poles, higher, stronger, whatever.
Right. Well, that was in a direct result to what our utility work that's going on,
Sure.
and with the streetscape work.
But as far as the buried utilities are concerned, is there any actual agreement that they're going to do the same kind of thing with their utilities that the city is now doing with water and sewer? Are the gas lines going to be done? Are any electric lines or telephone lines going to be
My
done?
worst nightmare is that the gas company comes in here 6 months after we finish the streetscape work and decides to do their gas lines, which they've been known to do.
I know.
So I have not been directly engaged in those conversations, but we are having those conversations with the gas company. And Jim, do you know where that stands? This is Jim Talley, and he's the overall project manager for the utility work. And with him are Scott Parkins and Cherie Taylor, Scott's got the utility side and Cherie's kind of got the streetscape side. So these are the pros who are working on this.
We're obviously not in direct control of them, but we are in communication with them all the time. In fact, we just had a several-hour meeting with AEP today to talk about their plans. Columbia Gas, I saw a few emails this afternoon asking, can we firm up what Columbia Gas is doing? We are doing our best to coordinate with them, and in some cases where we have things that will directly conflict with their lines, we can say, yes, you have to move this, but we can't say no, or we can't say you have to absolutely upgrade everything you have. And so we're doing our best to work with them to make it all happen, to make sure the scenario Kim mentioned where they come in 6 months after we're done. But it's not a guarantee, but we're doing our best to make sure that it doesn't happen. And the same, there's other lesser cable companies, Intellos, fiber. There's actually quite a few different utility companies down there that some of whose names you probably would never even heard of, but we're working with all of them.
AEP's actually been pretty proactive. AEP was already seeing a stress on their infrastructure due to all the development downtown, and so they have gone through and inspected all their underground utilities, look at all the duct banks that are underground, all the access, and are looking at how they relocate. They're actually trying to bring some transformers up above ground and put them in appropriate places to improve the reliability of the system. So they've been pretty proactive about it. Historically, we have a little bit more trouble with the gas company. Anything else? Again, thank you so much. We'll stay here as long as you would like, but not too late because the game starts in a half hour. So, again, thanks so much. And please continue to be in touch with us. Website, Heather Kennedy here is our representative with Solomonar on all things related to this utility project and issues there. Again, this started as a utility project. We're seizing an opportunity to make downtown even better, and we want to make sure that we answer your questions and are working with you to make all this work as painlessly as possible. Thank you.